oh, it's no big deal. You know, I lay in pain for 2 months, had 6 ribs broken, 3 of them separated, grinding upon bone for months, had part of my lung removed, and you think that's great and to be extolled. I mean, the sheer lack of any kind of self awareness that you're going to be leading thousands of men and women who will be have the use of force, and there's been great questions in our country about how that will be used, and you think a violent attack is just fine. So I guess my first question is, do you think that justifying that kind of violence sets a good example for the men and women of ICE and Border Patrol?
Mr. Chairman, first of all, I didn't know the extent of your damage. When the phone call was made, I made it to you and I tried to talk to you. You didn't engage at all. In fact, you said, get your paperwork in. It's got to be in 3 days in between.
You offered no apology.
Sir?
And you offer no apology today and no regrets. Haven't heard the word apologize, haven't heard the word regret, haven't heard I misspoke and it was heated and I made a mistake. I haven't heard any of those words.
Sir, actually it wasn't heated and I'm not apologizing for pointing out your character.
Good. So you're jolly well fine and you want the American public and the people up here to vote that may or may not vote for you to know that you supported the felonious violent attack on me from behind.
I did not say I supported it. I said I understood it. There's a difference.
So that means you really didn't approve of it, just completely understand it. What do you think most people would interpret completely understand to be? Support for or a condemnation of the violence?
Sir, as I said, we can have our differences. It's not going to keep me from doing my job as Secretary of Homeland Security. I'm going to secure Kentucky and take care of Kentucky as much as I am.
If this were a one-off, it would be one thing. If you just disliked me so much that you approved of violence against me, people could just write it off. Well, maybe they hate each other. But really, there's a pattern of this. Let's go ahead and roll the tape.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it now.
Well, stand your butt up there.
You stand there, Bob.
Oh, stop it.
Ready?
Sit down. You're a United States Senator. Sit down.
Active.
Okay, sit down, please.
All right.
Now you start. Hold it.
If you have to be called out, not this guy continues to get away with this stuff, and it's just, it's silly, it's stupid, but every now and then you get punched in the face.
Well, go back to the 1800s and 1700s. They used to have canes.
And rules. They used to have rules.
Yeah. Right. And there's a way that men used to settle their differences. I ignored him 4 times to be part of that. And people say, yes, you're supposed to ignore it. Well, I'm not a very good Christian. I try to be a good Christian. And I know people say you're supposed to turn the other cheek. I prefer the David method.
But we need to move from an almost
I'm not afraid of fighting. I will fight.
fighting.
Oh, I'm not. I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight. I'll do anything. And I don't care where I fight.
Inline side, any requests?
No, I really don't.
So no regrets. In fact, even after your anger had cooled, you were still bragging that if he'd only been brave enough to stand up, you'd have jumped over the dais and taught him a lesson, because that's how men should settle their differences. Do you think fighting as a resolution for political differences is a good example for the men and women of ICE and Border Patrol?
As you can notice over my shoulder here is my good friend Sean O'Brien. Both of us have had conversations. Both of us have shaken hands. And both of us agreed we could have done things different. Sean is someone that has become a close friend. We talk all the time. I've been on his podcast. We've talked through this. That's how you handle your differences. Not like this, Chairman.
I'm glad you guys are friends now and that you've reconciled. But really, it doesn't get to the real point whether or not you think violence is the way we settle things. In the days after the fight, you said, and I quote, sometimes people just need to be punched in the face. Is that still your opinion, that political disputes can sometimes and often only be resolved by violence?
No, I don't always agree with that. I don't believe in political violence. I've made that very clear. But sometimes people do need, theoretically speaking, sir, I get it. It's about character assassination for you. That's the way this game is played. I understand it. And you are making this about you, which is fine, but that doesn't keep me as Secretary of Homeland Security.
Character assassination when you were the one lauding the assault. Who do you think started that character assassination? I'm just repeating what you have done in character assassination. I'm repeating your support for the assault. So that's somehow something I started?
No, sir. What I'm saying is you're adding a lot to it.
In the days after the fight, you did many interviews in which you justified the violence as historically justified by precedents, such as caning and dueling. Is it today your opinion that the caning of Charles Sumner was not only justified, but argues still for resolving our political differences with violence?
What I would simply point out is some of the rules that still apply to this body. For instance, dueling with two consenting adults is still there. I was pointing out what
It's
is
been
still
illegal for 170 years. There's no precedent for legal dueling. Even then, they fled the country. Do you realize that the man that beat Charles Sumner with a cane, he beat him till he was unconscious? You know why no senators intervened? Because his friend held a gun on the other senators, and he kept beating him until he crushed his skull. That's what you're insinuating is the precedent of the Senate, and that's what you live by. That is a very, very dangerous sentiment. After a half a dozen victory lap interviews where you pointed out that the union guy was just lucky that fear kept him from standing up, Dana Bash asked you if you have any regrets about bringing violence to a Senate committee, and you replied that you have no regrets. Today you've said you have no regrets about being happy, being completely understanding why I was attacked from behind. You have no regrets about, instigating a brawl in a Senate committee hearing. Are those still your opinions?
Mr. Chairman, you're going to have your opinion. I'm going to have mine. As Secretary of Homeland Security, I'm going to bring peace of mind and security to this country, and I'm going to stay laser focused on that.
CNN correspondent Priscilla Alvarez is here with us as well. Priscilla, there were some major fireworks right out of the gate and in the exchange between senators.
Than ever, that the leaders in our country disavow violence and lead by example. Through the years, I've personally been exposed multiple times to political violence. I was in the right field batting cage when the crazed shooter unleashed nearly 200 shots at our congressional baseball practice. I'll never forget Steve Scalise valiantly trying to drag his body away as the gunman continued. Later that year, a Trump-hating felon attacked me from behind in my yard. I was just straightening up from picking up a tree limb. I was wearing noise cancellation headphones, never saw him coming, running pell-mell down the hill. I was struck in the back. The force of the blow sent us through the air nearly 10 feet, down the hill until his shoulder impaled me as we hit the ground. 6 of my ribs were broken. 3 of the ribs were completely separated, such that for weeks the ends of the ribs would grind upon each other. My lung was damaged. For weeks I could inhale but not have the rib strength to exhale. I developed 2 pneumonias. The pain was such that I could only sit up in bed by tying a rope to the foot of the bed and pulling myself up. But even then, the pain was that of 1,000 knives. Over the year of recovery, I began to cough up blood. I underwent removal of part of my lung. Complications led to an infection in the space between my lung and chest wall. I spent a week in the hospital having the infection lavaged every 6 hours through a chest tube. Recently, Senator Mullen, if you have time to listen, you were confronted by constituents that were angry because you voted against my amendment to stop all funding for refugee welfare programs. Instead of explaining your vote to continue these welfare programs for refugees, you decided to transfer the blame. You told the media that I was a freaking snake and that you completely understood why I had been assaulted. The reasons for going to war, and those should have been brought to the public and to Congress, and then under the Constitution we would debate that and decide whether to initiate or declare war. The administration, and frankly administrations of both parties, think they can just commit war as they please and that there are no repercussions. So there's quite a bit of a constitutional disagreement here.
Forgive me, Senator, but can I just interrupt for a second? The reason for going to war, although it may or may not have been said explicitly, is that the Iranians do have some enriched uranium. And if they got at it, they could put it on top of a missile and create a dirty bomb that would hit just about anywhere in Europe and certainly elsewhere in the Middle East. That was the reason to go to war, wasn't it?
Yeah, North Korea also has that, China has that, Russia has that, Pakistan has that, India has that, Israel has that. So the question really has to be, And really, there is
Sir,
a real.
they're not chanting death to America. They're not trying to kill us at every opportunity.
Let me answer the question. All right, you want to ask the questions? I'll answer the question. The answer to the question is that there's a great deal of disagreement over the facts of whether or not they are in the process of developing a nuclear weapon. We have 18 intelligence agencies have said there's been no progress in making a nuclear weapon since it was obliterated last summer. The Trump administration told us they obliterated their nuclear capabilities last summer. So it can't be both ways. It can't be both obliterated and, oh no, it's only days away. So that's not unusual. In fact, that may be the norm, that in Washington, things are often not what they appear to be. If you follow the news, you've been seeing reports of Elon Musk and Doge and getting rid of waste and fraud and abuse by the billions, if not trillions of dollars. And yet we are meeting here today, though, because Congress, namely the Senate, wants to increase federal spending. So on the one hand, you have Elon Musk and Doge and the Democrats complaining to high heaven, he's cutting too much, they're cutting too much. And Senate Republicans are coming forward today to pass a budget to allow them to raise federal spending. What gives? Are Republicans for getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse and reducing the deficit, balancing the budget, as the president says? Or are they really for increasing spending $340 billion? The budget that we will vote on will allow increased spending in the military by $150 billion. Increased spending. Question: do you agree without reservation to comply with any request or summons to appear or testify before any duly constituted committee of Congress if you're confirmed?
I do.
We'll now proceed to 7 minutes of questioning. The record should show, and I think will show, a lack of contrition, no apology, and no regrets for your support. You completely understand the violence that was perpetrated on me. You're unrepentant. The only thing you quibble about is whether I met you somehow when you're in the house. I don't think we ever met when you were in the house. And this idea that the only thing you're upset about is not that you are for violence. What you're upset about is that I called you a liar because you said it to my face. So it's really more about this machismo that you have. When in Oklahoma, the media asked you about the refugee welfare programs, the programs you voted to continue funding, it was this whole idea that you were going to transfer it because you were uncomfortable, your anger, low impulse control, causes you to then go after and decide that you're going to go after me as well. And so you say you completely understood that I was assaulted from behind, had 6 ribs broken and part of my lung removed, and that was just fine. That's something that you, I guess, approve of as far as resolution of political problems. When I talked to you privately on the phone, there was no apology. You just said, well, we can let our political difference, go by. And you said a few minutes ago, we can just set it aside. Well, political differences we can, but when you say that you agree with a felon, a Trump-hating felon who attacked me, somehow you think I'm just going to set that aside? Oh, it's no big deal. I lay in pain for 2 months, had 6 ribs broken, 3 of them separated, grinding upon bone for months, had part of my lung removed, and you think that's great and to be extolled. I mean, the sheer lack of any kind of self-awareness that you're going to be leading thousands of men and women who will have the use of force, and there's been great questions in our country about how that will be used, and you think a violent attack is just fine. So I guess my first question is, do you think that justifying that kind of violence sets a good example for the men and women of ICE and Border Patrol? And our troops right off the coast of Venezuela is a prelude to war. I think that there is a real question of legality. Under the military justice, under the Code of Military Justice, it says that when someone has been incapacitated or shipwrecked, or they're clinging to the wreckage of a boat, that they're out of combat and they're no longer subject to be killed. And so there is a real question, who gave the order and why would they give the order to kill someone who is out of combat? Now, over the weekend, the Secretary of Defense was saying, well, I don't know anything about it. I don't know anything about a second attack. But today, when he was interviewed, he said, well, yes, I left the room for a while. The second attack occurred, and I learned about it when he came back. But why was he telling us this weekend he didn't know anything about a second attack and he had never authorized it? But now that it's come to light, he says, oh, I didn't do it. Somebody else did it. The admiral did it. So they're all pinning blame on the military guy. But I'm one who tends to give a lot of leeway to the military guy and not so much leeway to the person who gave him the orders. These orders came from the Secretary of Defense, and ultimately he's going to have to accept responsibility. But to my mind, there's a question about whether or not killing people in the first place who you have no proof that they're armed, you have presented no proof that they're carrying drugs, and that you simply kill them. I think that's outrageous. But now, not only do we kill them, our government is following up by killing them when they're wounded and stranded and of no threat whatsoever, which is, according to our own laws, illegal.
Well, talking about he's been named by the administration. I don't know if you think it's appropriate that his name is made public before he testifies before the Armed Services Committee on Thursday. But I guess the question now is raised, where does the buck stop? Is it with the Admiral, the Defense Secretary, or the Commander-in-Chief?
I think it's, to me, amazing that anybody in the public accepts this. The idea that we would make an accusation. We will simply accuse someone and then they are found guilty without any kind of process. We asked the Coast Guard for specific statistics off the coast of Venezuela, and they said of boats that have been intercepted off of the coast before we came up with this blow them to smithereens policy, we used to interdict them. And of the boats that we interdicted off the coast of Venezuela, about 1 in 4, 21% to be exact, were not carrying drugs. That would mean if you're going to blow up all of the boats off the coast that look like drug boats or that you're suspicious for, 21% of the time you'd be killing innocent people. So I think it's outrageous that anybody would countenance this kind of activity. And I'm surprised that I seem to be one of the few people who seem to be alarmed at this. But I think it's unconscionable. It's wrong on any level to kill people with no proof that they are engaged in combat at all with your country.
Well, so should Pete Hegseth be fired?
There has to be an investigation, and I am glad that for a change there is a bipartisan push from the Armed Services Committee to get to the bottom of this. So there'll be an investigation. I think he needs to be asked under oath, did you give the order to kill any survivors? And if you didn't give the order, what was the order? Why did the Admiral think that he was supposed to kill people clinging to wreckage? And the idea that these people were still a threat, it's a debate whether they were ever a threat. They're on a motorboat 2,000 miles from our coast. If you want to take that motorboat to the closest point of entry in Miami, you'd probably have to fill it up 20 times. These motorboats can't go 2,000 miles on a tank of gas. If there was drugs on board, they may be going to other countries, but probably not to the U.S.